Hello, this is the first painting lesson, and for this lesson I thought I would start with something that is a simple object, an apple, in order to talk about the concept, which is lighting. How the light is hitting an object and how to make it look three-dimensional when we paint it. Because sometimes we look at an object like an apple and we say to ourselves, oh, it's red. So I will just, make the shape of the apple on the canvas and paint it all red. But then it looks flat. And we might want it to look three-dimensional. So this is some information about how to do that, how to think about mixing the paint so that it will look more like a three-dimensional apple. So in this view here, you can see the apple. I'm also sending you a picture of the apple so you can also look at that picture, which will be a little bit more like how I'm looking at it. I'm looking at it from up here, so I'm going to see a little bit more of the top of the apple when I'm painting it on here. So if the apple that I paint on here doesn't look exactly like this, that's part of the reason. And I also noticed that with the camera, it makes this side of the apple actually look darker than what I see in my view, but the camera does help to let us see the difference between the dark and the light side and the highlight, which is right here. Okay, I think that I will have this be used a little bit more later on. This is a value scale that has light to dark, but I will also point out a few things here before I start mixing paint with the value scale. So the value scale is just showing us light to dark, and I know in this video here it looks as if this top part is all one black piece, but it's not. So I can send you a value scale where it doesn't look like that. But the bottom part, you can see the difference here, where this is the lightest and then it gets darker, well, except it's not quite as light as white, you can see. Then it gets darker, 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 darker. And then up here, when I'm looking at it, I see it's getting darker, darker, darker. But we can compare the gray value scale to the apple and think about how light or dark the different parts that we see are. So for example, this is much darker than this side. And if I hold up the dark side of my value scale, I'm going to say it looks about like this one, but I know you can't really see that. However, on the light side, you can see that better. And this is gray compared to red. And sometimes that makes it a little tricky to think, oh wait, how light or dark is it because the color is so bright? But as I'm looking at it, I go, okay, well, this part of the apple, it doesn't look as light as this one, right? It's not that light. It's not the second one. It's darker than the third one. It even looks darker than the fourth one. It actually looks kind of like in between the fourth one and the fifth one in the camera view. If I'm looking at it in real life, it looks maybe like the number 5 one here, which is the one on the end. Okay, and then you also see this highlight up here, and you see a lighter area around it. So if this area down here on the lighter side looks more like this, and then I turn it and I'm looking at, say, the area around the bright spot. Okay, now that looks more like the number 4. So a little bit lighter than the one on the end. And if I look just at the bright spot, I'm like, oh wait, that looks like white. That looks really, really bright because the light is shining on there. Okay, so now the idea is to mix the colors or decide what color is it, how light or how dark it should be. I've got my colors ready to go on the palette, and I'm going to mix a few colors here and hold them up in front of the apple. That way we can take a look and compare what kind of colors we are seeing. So if I take just the red, now I didn't mix anything into the red, but I take just the red, I go, oh look it! That red, it blends in, the color of the red kind of blends into that middle part of the apple right here, where it's bright. But if I put it over here, whoa, it pops out, and I know it's much too light. The color is much too light for this side of the apple, but it looks correct here. But if I put it by the light spot, it's like, oh, nope, it's too dark. Too dark for the light spot. So I need to mix a few different colors to make it look correct. So first of all, to make things lighter, usually we think I will just add some white and it will make a lighter color. I'm going to try to get even closer to the apple here. To the light area. And I want to try to mix something for this side here where it's light but it's not the super bright spot. Because I know that just my red is going to be too light. So let's see what happens if I add some white to my red. Okay. If I add some white to my red, maybe I should back the camera up a little. Okay, notice now my lighter red, it's too light for that middle of the apple, but it looks okay for the side that's really bright. Oh, here, maybe if I hold it a different way. There we go. You can see how it kind of blends in over on that side. Okay. Now, sometimes you may also notice that a little bit of yellow can be helpful too. Like you could see part of it where there's a little bit of yellow, and so if I put a little yellow in and make a little bit of orange on the apple, that can help. But what about the dark side? I'm not using any black when I mix here because it makes it more simple. So the way to make it look more brown or more dark, like a dark red, because I don't have a darker red color. If you have a darker red color, you can try that and see if it looks correct. See if it looks dark enough. But I can add some blue and some yellow into the red, but if I keep it mostly red still, then it will make it darker. It will also make it more brown if you do that, because it won't be a bright dark red, but it will be a darker red. So I'm adding a little yellow, a little blue. Okay, and then let's take a look. It does look like it looks more like the darker side of the apple. This still looks a little bit light, right? When I compare it, I go, oh, it's a little bit light. But if I put it over to the middle, I go, okay, it's definitely too dark for the bright part of the apple. I got it darker. Okay, so if I want to darken it even more, then I add a little bit more of the other colors in there, the blue and the yellow. Okay, and I'm not sure if you know what happens if you're trying to darken something, but then you're like, oops, I'm going to lighten it up, and I add some white. I don't know if you know what happens. It gets kind of like gray looking then. So if it gets too dark, and then you want to add white to lighten it, that isn't really a good idea. It's better to use the other colors that you were already using. Okay. Yeah, it's getting there. Maybe a little bit more blue to darken it. Okay. Yeah, that looks like it. Okay. Or at least it looks like it in the camera view. When I'm looking at it on mine, it's not quite right, but you know, it's close. It's close. Okay, so let me show you the palette again, what I have mixed so far. Here's the red, that's just plain red. Here it is where I added some white and it looks like a pink. And here I have added some yellow and blue to it. And all three of those colors look very different. But I can use them as part of this apple. And when I blend them, and I can use some colors that are kind of in between, right? I can mix the red and this kind of pink color together a bit and make something in the middle. That way it doesn't just chop like, oh, it's a different object, but it kind of blends slowly from one color to the other color. So that's what I can show next. Okay, and I think I already said, but I'm going to give you a photo of this apple as well. So you can also look at the photo and then paint from the photo. But now I am going to begin painting the apple on here. And I'm going to think a little bit about composition when I paint it. Composition is how the parts of the picture are put together, but I don't think I'm going to explain a lot about composition today because I want to just mainly focus on values, light and dark, thinking about how to make something look three-dimensional, and that the same object, just one object, can have those different light and dark colors on it. Okay, so first of all, I need my shape of the apple. So I'm going to sketch that out. I'm using a thinner brush so that it's kind of like drawing with a pencil on here. And I'm making the shape of the outside of the apple. Okay, a place where the stem is going, and the light is coming from this side. So there's shadow on this side, and I'm going to make the shadow that's on the table. I will mix a separate color for that, but I'll first focus on the apple, and then we'll focus on the background. Usually I would put some paint in the background first, but since that's not the thing I'm trying to focus on in what is being taught, well, you know what? I can do the background first. It's always a good idea. So why not do it that way? Okay, but first a sketch. Okay, and then there's a line where the table is. The angle I'm looking at is different, so I'm going to put the line between the table and the wall. And of course it's okay if it's not exactly perfect the first time around. You just cover up whatever you didn't want. And if you do the part where you sketch something in, if you do it very thin with thin paint, then it's much easier to cover over it too. Okay, so because I am doing the background first, I am going to mix up a color for the wall and something for the table. Notice that the table will have more than one color because there's a shadow on the table and there's a light side on the table, but the wall is about the same. So the wall, it is not a bright color, but it's a very light color. It will have a lot of white in it. But anytime you have a color that's kind of like a tan, an off-white, you can make it using all three of your colors, the blue, red, and yellow together. And I think I will not talk too much about exactly how to make that color today, the wall color, because then it might be like too much information at once. And especially because that is, it's not so important. And if you want to pick a different color for the wall, it's fine. It will be fine. But it will be easier to see the apple if you, it will be easier to see this side of the apple. See, it's dark if you use a light color in the background. And then the apple on this side looks more like medium, like a medium color, and then the wall is very light, right? So it actually helps the apple to stand out. Okay, just about getting to a color. For the background. Okay. That one is okay. Why not? I will go with that. Okay, I've got a color. And you'll see I'm picking something that's very light. And when I brush it in, I don't have to be too exact on the lines. It's easier if you blend over some of the lines, because then with it when the paint is more thin, because then when you add more paint later and it's thicker, you can just decide, okay, it's exact, the line is here or the line is there, or I want it to be a fuzzy line and not show up too much. But if you make a thick, hard line right away, then it's harder to change it or fix it if you need to fix it. And we always seem to need to fix it. Oh, something I forgot to mention is that I'm just painting this, and I won't be pausing too much while I'm painting, but at any time when you're looking at this, if you want to pause the video, go ahead and pause the video while you're working. So if I move too fast and you need to catch up, you can pause the video. Okay, that's right. Keeping it background first. Okay. Okay, then I'm going to mix color for the table and for the shadow on the table. Notice how the light side of the table, if you look at how light or how dark it is, right? The wall is definitely lighter than the table. The wall is lighter than the table. And it looks like maybe a little bit lighter than this part of the apple, but very close. Very close. So it's not a lot lighter than this side of the apple. So that means about medium. And it's a brown kind of color, a kind of grayish brown color. So when I'm mixing it, once again, I'm going to use all three of the colors, blue, red, and yellow, and some white, but just not as much white because I don't want it to be as light as the wall. So even though the table itself is just brown, it's one brown color, but because of the way the light is hitting it, some parts are lighter and some parts are darker. Okay, I've got a kind of mix here. Let's see. Let's see. Yeah, that's what I thought. It's a little bit darker than the light side of the table. If I compare it to the shadow, it's definitely too light for the shadow, right? But it's a little bit dark for the light area on the table. Okay, so I just added some white to it. Oh, see, it blends in better now. I can see that it blends in better with that color. Okay, and anytime I change the color, if I'm using the same brush, I'm not sure if you're using a lot of brushes or, just a few brushes. If I'm going to use the same brush for a new color, of course, I clean the brush off first. That way it doesn't get mixed up. Okay, and I'm going to add this color on the lighter area, but not the shadow. I need to keep the shadow darker. Okay, I'm going to let some of the shadow come up a little bit more and not go down too far. Okay, and then I'm going to mix another color for the shadow area. And I don't want so much white in that one. So I want to make sure that when I'm mixing it, I'm keeping it dark. I'm going to start with a lot of blue because that usually will keep it pretty dark. Put some of the red and yellow in it. So that it will be a brown color. Okay, so right now I have a color that's very dark and I think it will be too dark. Too dark. It looks kind of like it in the camera. It is too dark, but it looks kind of like it. But if you add some of the lighter colors, of course it will lighten it up some. Closer. It's closer. Okay, yeah, that's better. That's better. And then I make sure I'm cleaning my brush again since I'm using the same brush for the other color. But if you're using a different brush, then it doesn't matter so much. Okay. Ooh, it looks kind of purple in here, but I like it. If I don't want it to look so purple, I can add more yellow. Okay, and when I'm putting it in, I can kind of blend some of that color together if they're still blending, to soften the edge if I don't want the edge too hard. Yeah, I'm going to blend a little bit of it over. There, kind of in between the colors. A little bit. Okay, and it doesn't matter if I'm getting into the apple because I'm going to cover over it. Okay, so I have a background. You can see the colors are kind of similar. It's not exactly, but it's kind of similar there. And now I can create the colors on the apple. I've got the background. I already have the colors mixed, which I showed what I did earlier. So I will begin adding the dark area on the apple. If you have trouble figuring out where does the dark area go, where does it stop, you can go, okay, let me think. It's going to be about like this, and sketch it on there for yourself. But don't go exactly by that line, because if you just cut it off right at this line, uh-oh. And then it looks like there's a cut on your apple, right? But you'll blend over that area with your colors. Okay, so I have a dark side, and then I'm going to go for the medium. And you see that I'm making it rough, not really like a line, because it makes it easier to blend things together and make it look more natural. So I'm just thinking of the area where it's going. It looks like I don't have enough of the dark on there, because you see the white of the canvas showing through, and it's making it look like it's not dark enough there. So I'm adding more of the paint in that dark area. And in case you're wondering what I'm doing here, that's the darker area by the stem. But I'm thinking I may change the color a little bit, but I will be darkening it there. If I move the camera up here, you can see what I mean, the darker area by the stem. Okay, if I'm moving from a color that is very dark to much, much lighter, then I really want to make sure that I'm cleaning my brush well. That or else I use a totally different brush. I know that a lot of people will use a totally different brush when going from a very dark color to a very light color. Okay, so moving on to the lighter part of the apple. Now I didn't add any yellow into it yet, but I am thinking that part of it I will add some yellow and make part of it more orange. I think it looks more delicious that way, but just a little bit, you know, not like a bright orange. I'm trying not to cover the very light spot there because it will be hard to get it very light if I cover it up. Okay. All right, so aha, it is looking like the light is shining on the apple. Amazing, right? It's like, what? It's 3D. Okay, but I will keep working at it a little bit to blend some of the colors together. I want to go kind of in between this lighter area and the medium area. So I put some of those colors together. And if you're painting and you run out of a particular color, you know, just mix it again. It can be tricky to get it exactly the same. Sometimes it's okay if it's not exactly the same, but it's just close and then it works. Okay, so I am going to mix some yellow into just a little bit of yellow into my lighter color. See what I get here. It's a yummy color. Hold on. I sometimes take off my glasses. Oh, too light. Too light for that area. So this is the part I'm looking at. It kind of looks a little bit orange. Okay, so if it's too light, I want it to be more of the medium color. Then I want to mix more of that medium color into it. I am getting a little bit of blue accidentally in there, and that will make it brown, which is no good. So that means I need to squeeze a little more red on my palette. So if I want a color to be more brown, of course, it's good if I use red, yellow, and blue. But if I want it to not turn brown, then I don't want to use all three of the colors. Okay, I'm going to try this mix again. No blue, nice and bright. Slightly orange. So some red, just a little bit of yellow in there. Okay, let's see. Let's see what I've got. Oh, needs more yellow. So if it's too pink and I want it to be more orange, I can add a little more yellow to it. Try again. Still too pink. But it helps to go slowly when I'm mixing. Here, let me show. Mixing with the palette knife. Okay. Okay, let's see. Oh, that's closer. That's a little bit more orange looking. A little more yellow. I think I'm going to put a little more yellow. Okay, it still looks kind of bright though, right? It's too bright. So if it's too bright, less of the white, more of the red and yellow. Okay, let me try this. Less white. Oh, better. Better. That's dark. It's a little darker. More like this part up here. And that part. Okay. I like it. I will use it. Okay, and then down here, you can kind of see it, but I can see it better from my view. There's some yellow, but it's in the dark area. So it can't be light. It can't be bright like this. It has to actually be more brown. It looks, when I look at it, I think it looks the same. This area looks kind of like yellow. It has some orange in it. And then I think to myself, oh, but this area does too. But I have to keep it dark, otherwise it won't be the shadow side. It's a little bit lighter on the shadow side, but it can't be really, I can't have the actual like color of the light side, otherwise it will look weird. It will look like the apple, this part of the apple is funny, it's wrong, it's popping out. So I'm going to take some of the dark color, some of the color that I have for the dark side here, and then some of the color that I have mixed that has the orange in it, and I put it together. And that should work. Let's see what I get. I'm going to compare. Oh. Okay, so I know it still looks very bright. That means I can add some more blue to it or more of the other colors. I think the problem is because, like I said before, you know, if you have a color that has white and then you're trying to make it go dark, it doesn't work so well. Okay, let me try that again. No white, sorry. I don't like how it came out. Okay, this time I will use mostly red, some yellow, and some blue, because I want it to be kind of more orange looking, but not too light. Okay, getting there. I think it takes more yellow. Okay, so you can see what I'm making over here. It looks more like a brown, a yellow brown. Let's see if that looks more like it. Oh, it still looks light. Okay. If it still looks light and you haven't used white, it means that there's too much yellow. But you can see how it takes time to mix the colors. Oh, better. Okay. So, in my view, this is close. I know it doesn't look like it so much there, but I think this will work because it is very dark actually. So it should work. Actually it could even be lighter, but okay. Now this side of my apple is looking, let's see if that helps. This side of my apple is looking almost the same as the shadow, but the shadow color that I mixed is actually quite a bit darker. It's just that the canvas, some of the canvas is showing through. So if I add another layer on there to darken it up more, a little thicker layer in the shadow, it will darken it. Yes. Okay. Now I'm not done because I still have the area for the stem. I have this light area, the light spot. Something I don't want to do with the light spot is just put a big glob of white and say, oh, it's there, because then it will look like something is stuck on the apple instead of it actually being the highlight. But if I go a little bit more slowly, so if I have the light color here, and I mix it with some white, so it's kind of, here's the light, here's the white, and I mix something that's very pale but not all the way to white yet. And then I just get a little closer to my light spot on here. Then if I want that area to be totally white on the white spot, then I can use some white and blend it in, and now it looks like it's part of the apple. So I change it slowly, and that way it's not a hard cut out piece that doesn't belong on it. Okay, I didn't finish this side here. This was the dark area where the stem is, and then here is the lighter area, and then I will put the stem over the top of it. But I'll also put some parts that are a little bit more yellow in here. Okay, and see, I have that piece there, but I still have the background color. I can go over it, or if I want the edge to be sharper now around the apple, I can do that. Okay. Darker over here still, a little bit darker. Making it change from dark to light. This area here, the light is shining on it, so it's a little brighter. And not too bright down here. You'll notice I keep working on it because I keep checking to see where the lighter or darker areas are. There's still shadow right there. Okay. There's a shadow from the stem. If that's too complicated, it's okay. You don't have to add it. Okay, and then I have a stem. I'll use a smaller brush because this is kind of a big brush for a stem. Let me pick something more like this that will help. So, smaller details. Oh, okay, and I will mix a color for it too because you can see it is not red. It's more of a light green. There is some brown on it on that side, but we have like a light green. A light green, usually it has a lot of yellow, a little bit of blue. And probably some white. Yes, that's very light. Here, let's see if I can get closer to that and see. So the lighter area of the stem is a little bit more dull, not quite as bright as that green, but it's light. But it's very light like that. Turn apple. Okay. Okay, and if I'm doing a small detail, then I think carefully, where am I putting my brush stroke? And the stem has a shadow area. I think I made that too much. I made it too big. Try again. Shadow, stem shadow. Try again. Okay. To make it three-dimensional. There we go. That's better. This side of the stem has a shadow. A bit darker. Yes, like that. There, and now it looks like the stem is coming out of the apple. And I have heard that to make something really look 3D, you want at least 3 values: dark, medium, and light. So I have dark, medium, and then I'll make a light value. So I'm taking my green color that I mixed and just a bit of the green and some white. That will make a really very, very light green. And I'm going to put it on the light side carefully. There. And yes, I think it makes it look more 3D. Let's see the whole thing. Yeah. Okay, so I can still work on it some. Say on the edges, see here I left a little bit of white. If I don't like it, I can change that. I can fix it. Oh, that's very light. That is not the color. That's the back. That's the wall color. There. That's better. Better. Okay. Okay, so this is where you can stop right about here, unless you see something and you want to fix it or add more, and see how you do. See if it works. See if it comes out looking three-dimensional.